Can you make a noise? Can you do something to let me know that you're here with me now?
You know the funny thing about these people? They're doing this paranormal investigation and stuff. They're calling out to the thing to show themselves, but the moment something actually starts happening, they run away. And I want to let you know that I'm going to dedicate some parts of my upcoming interviews with priests that are based in Rome, addressing some of the wildest claims about the Vatican, statues, artifacts, so-called secrets, etc. I think this should be interesting, so I hope I'll be able to ask the right questions. And in fact, I got the idea to do this after I listened to a lot of very stupid claims made during this Joe Rogan show with two ignorant guests who probably know very little about the church.
It was back in the day when you can get away with something like that, you know, like...
Well, if you know the history of the Roman Catholic Church, you know, Constantine, this is like mainstream history. Constantine, he was a pagan, which can be considered Luciferian.
Frankly,
when you look at the history of the Vatican, when you look at the history, Constantine decided to convert to Christianity because the people were leaving. The people were like, that. So this is mainstream history. Constantine goes, okay, I'm no longer pagan / Luciferian. I'm no longer ancient Babylonian. We like Christ too. We're gonna do Christ. We're gonna do. We got our own. This is mainstream. We're gonna start the Roman Catholic Church. We're gonna have a pope. He talks to Jesus like every day. We're gonna have cardinals. They talk to Jesus like once a week. And then we have the bishops. They talk to Jesus like once a month. And then the priests every now and then. And all of a sudden they created rock stars, dudes with power. The pope has power. He talks to Jesus every day. Cardinals, bishops, priests. Right. So come on back. We got Jesus for you. They made Jesus into like
you're telling us things we already know.
No. But what I'm saying is they were never into Jesus.
Thanks for tuning in to Armor of God again, and thank you so much to all of you for taking a little bit of your time to be here with us. So hopefully you'll learn a lot from this video as well. And if it's not too much of a hassle for you, please share this video on your social media to help share the message. Now I'd like to start this video by sharing a few clips specifically on exorcisms and deliverance. And the reason why I decided to start this video with these clips primarily because so many of you made the request in the comments. But there's also a clip of a possessed victim who shared how he felt during his moments of possession, which should serve as a warning for the rest of us. Let's start with the first one.
Scendi Spirito Santo, benedetto il seno di tua madre, benedetto il latte che ti ha nutrito, benedetto quando ti ha portato al fondo battesimale. Io ti segno con 3 segni di croce, uno dentro al cervello, questo cervello sia sempre libero, uno sulla bocca per proclamare la parola di Dio, un altro nel tuo cuore.
Il demonio è stupido.
Il demonio è stupido.
Il demonio è stupido.
Alla famiglia.
Il demonio è stupido.
Il demonio è stupido.
Asmodeo è stupido.
Asmodeo è stupido.
Asmodeo, il demonio del sesso. Asmodeo, il demonio del sesso.
Asmodeo, il demonio del sesso.
Vattene via.
Vattene via.
Vattene via dal mio cervello.
Vattene via dal mio cervello.
Dio scegli nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo. Amen. Chiusa questa benedizione.
Ok, grazie.
Mi sento più come un burattino trattato e usato male. Qualcosa sì, ricordo, quello che ricordo è che non riesco a controllarmi. Quando ho cominciato a pregare e ho visto, avendo delle benedizioni, che piano piano, senza medicinale, senza niente, sono incominciato a sentirmi bene. Cioè, per me la medicina, questa qua, questa è la medicina, il crocifisso, la Madonna, quella è la mia medicina. Cioè, se non ci sarebbe stato Don Giuliano, Don Emilio, io secondo me della mia vita avrei potuto chiedere poco e niente.
Now I've been sharing a lot of clips with you for the past 2 years, and every now and then, comments that are calling us who talk about these things such as exorcisms, angels, and demons, that we're a bunch of crazies. Remember when Father Rehill had that interview with Sean Ryan before? Just take a look at the comments there and see what some of the people said about Father Rehill. So of course this only goes to show what many of the priests we've listened to said before is true, that the devil's greatest lie is to make people believe he doesn't exist. Like this one, for example, of like what it was.
That's an interesting thing, right? Like, because that's in a lot of these cases. They feel like it's not just ghosts, but it's ghosts that are being controlled by some sort of a demonic entity.
Right.
And the demonic entity keeps these ghosts there, which is like another layer of belief you have to
Right.
have.
Exactly.
Like, you just don't just believe that maybe when people die, their energy gets left behind, and then maybe that energy gets controlled by demons.
Exactly.
Like, oh my.
It's
Now
like another level.
We're so into crazy now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm willing to go there.
It gets meta. It gets very meta.
But if you did encounter a demon, nobody would believe you. And then
hell
you would
no.
be trapped. You would be this person who, for the rest of your life, oh, there goes Bob and his demon stories.
Yeah.
Like, no one would buy it. But
exactly. Same thing with aliens or
Right.
anything. Like
Yeah,
anything you
right.
see that are outside of this like logical
Physical world.
normal daily encounters. Yeah. Anything outside of that, Bigfoot, anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything where you see things. And there's been many times that people have seen things that they swear were real. And you go, God, that poor I would rather not see those things and then just have everybody just looking at you. Oh, here comes mine.
So for those who would not want to believe because they think it's illogical, what do you think they'll probably say when a priest says something like this?
L'occhio è la cosa importante, non a caso si dice il malocchio quando viene fatto il maleficio. Gli occhi di un ossesso sono satanici, gli occhi di un malato sono spenti. Il combattimento avviene spesse volte occhi negli occhi e gli ossessi mandano le pupille sopra perché non resistono a guardare gli esorcisti o le persone in grazia di Dio negli occhi.
Anyway, from that same interview on Joe Rogan Experience, they did talk about something that reminded me of what Father Winston shared before, why he doesn't perform exorcisms on hotel rooms. The reason I'm alternating between clips like Joe's here and then the clips of priests is to give you sort of like a practical example. It's an approach I've been taking ever since I've released that video of the Indian family in Dubai.
My stepfather, who's like a very like sober thinking, like rational person, went to Gettysburg and he said, you can feel the sadness.
Yeah.
He goes, it just feels horrible. Like you're there and you feel death. He goes, I've never felt anything like that. Like you're at a battleground and, you know, even though it's 200 years ago or whatever it was, less than 200 years ago, you feel it. He goes, you can feel it. He goes, I had to get out of there.
Yeah, that's the thing with some of these places. It's not necessarily like, oh, like, you know, immediately you're just like, oh yeah, this is spiritual energy or whatever like that. But it's just heavy, or it's just like you feel off when you go into these places. Like as soon as you stepped into the Conjuring house, have you ever seen the Conjuring movies?
Yes.
So they're actually based on a real house in Rhode Island, and that was one of those places that we had walked into, and you were like almost getting nauseous.
I almost threw up, and I'm not. So what's interesting about the paranormal and what we've learned the past 4 years is that it affects people differently. Some people can see stuff. Some people claim they're mediums and can communicate more. I feel like I have more of like an empathic, like almost like I just feel worse like whenever there's something around. And so when we first walked into the Conjuring house, like there was a point where I thought I was going to throw up and I was looking for exits.
Now the guests who were part of that interview were two paranormal investigators who go to abandoned places trying to communicate with the dead, etc. I mean, to be completely honest, when someone does something like this, which many priests have warned us not to, of course the place will be haunted eventually.
Can you make a noise? Can you do something to let me know that you're here with me now? Louise, are you here?
And the funny thing is, they're always calling out and searching for those things, but the moment they hear or see something, they will run away and start cursing and screaming.
There was an exorcism that was performed by a priest in Gary, Indiana that got a lot of notoriety a few years ago. And then the people that produced the movie The Conjuring purchased the house where strange things were happening. Well, what began to happen is that people were breaking into the house and doing seances and whatnot because they thought evil lived in the house. But they didn't realize that the things that they were doing, the seance and trying to conjure up the spirits of the dead, is what was causing the evil to manifest.
But this also explains a little further why priests don't do deliverance on hotel rooms, because it's for the same reason why many of the exorcists say there's no shortcut to healing. If you're possessed and you want to be freed of the demons but refuse to abandon your sinful ways that got you possessed in the first place, they would want to perform exorcisms on you because you're going to be inviting 7 worse demons later on.
About hotels. So the owner of the hotel comes to us and say, Father, can you bless the hotel? Right? So it means that you're going to bless each room. Now, we do not do that. We will bless your offices, but we cannot bless individual rooms if the intention is to drive away evil spirits, because the owner, the user of the room, you don't know what's going to happen, what they will do in the room, right? So there is a possibility of deliverance and then having the room again violated. Now, how about us doing our own blessing of the rooms that we are staying? Well, that is actually to create a sacred space for yourself so that the evil spirits will not come in to disturb you. Now, the next participant, because you don't own the hotel, right? You don't own the hotel. So you don't own the hotel room. You're just there for the night or for 2 days or whatever. So you're creating a sacred space for you. At that particular moment, that is your space. When you leave, the place is not blessed. Another user would come in and do something else. So does it violate? Well, it might violate the place, might continue. The practice is actually just that. No? It's you're not doing the blessing of the room in a permanent manner. It's just creating a sacred space for yourself because you do not own the room. It's a different thing if you own the room. Then there is a kind of permanence, as it were, in the place, because that is really where you actually stay and live quasi-permanently.
Now, when I released my interview clips with Father Winston before, and a lot of times during the interview, Father Winston would use examples of the cases he dealt with in the Philippines. And some wrote in the comments that this is somehow unique to countries like in the Philippines, but would not be so prevalent in the West. And that's why I'd like to share this clip of Father Roberto, who's based in Italy. Listen to this.
Abbiamo svolto un esorcismo su di una persona che è stata sottoposta a dei riti così di magia, a dei riti satanici, ed è stata consacrata in questi riti. Per cui il demonio in questi esorcismi vanta un diritto e dice di avere una specie di proprietà su questa persona. E ci sono molte persone che vengono da noi perché hanno dei malesseri, hanno dei dolori, questo è un retaggio culturale che c'è anche in Italia, perché la gente è abituata sempre ad andare, che ne so, dai guaritori, dai fattucchieri.
I just had my third interview with Father Francis recently, and there's going to be another one later in March. And there's a very interesting conversation between him and his teacher, also an exorcist, where the two talked about how to recognize a demonic presence. Listen to this.
Father De Meo is someone who for more than 50 years has been confronting this and remains an extraordinarily well-balanced, persuasive, and awesome person. That's the kind of person you want to learn from.
Ci conosciamo da 1992.
C'è sempre bisogno di aiuto.
Sì. Cioè il discernimento, io personalmente in quel momento sentivo qualcosa dentro di me, quasi come lo Spirito Santo ci insegna. No, non è demonio. Ma succede anche a lei?
Sì.
Si sente questo...
Dunque la regola normale per vedere un po' se c'è il diavolo o meno, tenendo presente che il diavolo può fare anche l'inganno, almeno momentaneamente, insomma, e la preghiera. Io sto a fare una lotta, a un momento opportuno devo vedere se devo usare il fucile o il cannone. Non c'è una regola fissa, cioè a quell'ora alle 10 usi il fucile, alle 10 e mezzo il cannone, mi devo regolare secondo il caso. Perché sapendo che il demonio ne fa di tutti i colori per non farsi conoscere, non solo e per poter rimanere è il problema. Allora io uso questo metodo qua, per me è infallibile.
And for the last clip that I'd like to share with you, I'll end this with a clip of Father Joseph Iannuzzi where he talks about the virtue of humility. I think you're going to learn a lot from this one. Please listen to this.
The virtue which most exalts God is humility, and the virtue which most exalts the creature before God and men is humility. Humility, Faustina relates, the devil can cloak himself with. He can feign humility, right? There are some attitudes out there where people appear on the outside to be holy, pious, but on the inside are less so. We don't know this by our own judgment. We know it by God's direct revelation, approved by the Church to his mystics. I here recall an episode at Fatima, where the little shepherd child named Lucia, before she entered the convent in Coimbra, Portugal, and became a nun, when she was yet a pastor, a little shepherd child, pastoring the sheep, the Virgin Mary revealed to her that there was this one particular soul who was a reputed holy soul who had died, and the Virgin Mary told Lucia that she would be in purgatory till the end of the world. And Lucia was shocked, because everyone in the town, most everyone, thought she was the holiest of all. She appeared on the outside to be very holy, you see. So Lucia gathered up people to pray for this soul, and she was released due to the prayers of the people in the town. So here's a case of a person who appears on the outside to be holy, but on the inside is less so. So Satan can feign or mask humility, but one virtue Satan cannot feign or mask is obedience. Humility provides the soul with a garment of profound calm. The most perfect, the most sublime humility is that of losing one's way of reasoning and of not discoursing on the why and on the how, but of abandoning oneself to God in one's own nothingness, and in doing so, the soul, without realizing it, finds itself immersed in God. This, in turn, produces in the soul the most intimate union, the most perfect love toward its highest good. This is to the soul's greatest advantage, for in losing its own reason, the soul acquires divine reason. And in losing every inquiry of itself, whether the things that happen to it that are favorable or adverse, it will be interested in and will acquire a language that is completely divine and heavenly. A true humility, the most sublime and perfect humility, is that of losing one's own way of reasoning. Now, let us be careful. Jesus did not say losing reasoning. He said losing one's way of reasoning. What's the difference? Sometimes we think according to our way of thinking and not according to God's. So we have to put on, as St. Paul says, the mind of Christ. Assume the attitude of Christ. How do we do that? And how do we know that we are not reasoning according to God, but according to our own way of thinking or our own standards? Well, the answer to that question is, one, by informing our conscience with good teachings that are found in sacred scripture, that are found in the catechism, and so forth. In other words, we start to behave less for our own interests and more for that of God in and through our neighbor. This is known in psychology as altruism. So the soul progresses from egotism to altruism. It thinks less of its own interests. It doesn't abandon its interests, but it thinks less of what is of interest to itself and more of that of what is interest to God and of its neighbor. Now, certainly the two work hand in hand. If we serve each other, certainly we're indirectly serving ourselves. St. James says as much in his letter when he says that when one turns a soul from its errant ways back to God, it saves that soul and itself. You see? So when we serve each other's interests, we are automatically serving God and our own interests. We're serving our own interests in as much as we are amassing merit before God and neighbor, without even serving our own interests. Okay. Humility does that. That's a true humility, the most sublime. Okay, it's not the feigned, external, what I call piousness, that is attempt to impress others that we are holy. It is a natural,
second nature way of serving God in and through others.
Well, I guess that is all for the video this time. This video is meant to be released for the weekend, so I didn't plan on releasing a long video this time. But still, I hope you've learned something from this video. And please do let me know if you have any suggestions, what I should cover next, what's lacking, etc. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left the link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.